of Gavin Richard Presents on channel G-Boot 2786. Please subscribe. I am your gracious host, Gavin Richard. We are live, and I'm coming at you with 5. So, a lot of people, I'm sure you guys have been wondering what my thoughts are about the recent apparent quote-unquote suicide of Jeffrey Epstein. For those that don't know or have been living under a rock for the last few months, and we've been talking about Jeffrey Epstein, to how the media creates selective outrage when it comes to these Me Too movements. For instance, we use it in relation to the Bill Cosby case. Jeffrey Epstein was a finance investor, and he was a very wealthy man. He was a multi-billionaire. Of course, I've been looking actually on news reports. They try to treat him as a multi-millionaire, but he was actually a multi-billionaire. So they even downgrade you then. And yesterday, while he has been awaiting charges of multiple counts of child sex trafficking and other sexual assault charges, Epstein apparently died in a quote-unquote apparent suicide. Now, how does someone that wealthy, who was not afforded bail, white and not afforded bail, that says a lot. Even Jerry Sandusky, when he was accused of doing what he had at Penn State, he was able to get bail, and he was actually sodomizing kids on the Penn State campus. So whenever a white man who's wealthy and has money can't actually afford to get bail, he's in trouble. We're in trouble. So that was the first thing that was odd to me. And of course, they did that in relationship. And of course, they play out together when you look at R. Kelly and you look at Jeffrey Epstein. And you remember I even talked about that on my previous videos a few weeks ago, about how the correlation between Epstein and R. Kelly is different when the way that the media portrays the actual, not portrays, but treats the individuals. And Epstein apparently, from the sources that have come out, he had some very interesting people in his company, including former presidents Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, President Donald Trump, who's 45, as we call him, celebrities, including Kevin Spacey. Now, that's interesting. Kevin Spacey's of course, was mentioned to me too, but he had his charges dropped a few weeks ago, if you guys remember. They tried to even squeeze in Chris Tucker because Chris Tucker was on the planes. But in reality, Chris Tucker was only hanging out, I believe, with Epstein because he was hanging out with Bill Clinton. And a lot of people don't know this, but Chris Tucker and Bill Clinton are very good friends. So that probably was how he was introduced to Jeffrey Epstein. And the New York Times had to throw that in their article. And of course, around the same time Epstein got arrested is when R. Kelly was facing federal charges in New York and Illinois, respectfully. And he was denied bail, of course, in all of those. And I wouldn't be surprised and of course, we've heard from R. Kelly's former press secretary that he was concerned for R. Kelly and that he was I don't think he said he was necessarily on suicide watch, but his mental state was not great. So, as he's awaiting trial. Now, recently, and this is an article, I saw this also in the New York Post, and I wanted to get a copy of it before it gets destroyed or it gets pulled. Someone who claims to be a former inmate of the Metropolitan Correctional Center, which is where Epstein was found unresponsive and declared dead. It's in Lower Manhattan. He spoke with the New York Post, and he basically stated that there was no way that this man could have killed himself. And he states, and I'm quoting this, "I've done too much time in those units. It's an impossibility. Between the floor and the ceiling is like 8 or 9 feet. There's no way for you to connect to anything. It would never happen. When you're on suicide watch, they put you in this white smock, a straitjacket. They know a person cannot be injurious to themselves. The clothing they give you is a jump-in uniform. Everything is dark brown color. Now, very interesting. I just recently read another article where they said that Jeffrey Epstein was not apparently under suicide. Of Jeffrey Epstein from weeks ago that he was on suicide watch before. Now, when we Google this, and I go to the New York Times, this is an article this morning. They're stating, like all federal prisons, the Metropolitan Correctional Center in Lower Manhattan has a suicide prevention program designed for inmates at risk of taking their own lives. After an apparent attempt 3 weeks ago, Jeffrey Epstein, the financier who was at the facility awaiting trial on charges he sexually abused dozens of girls, was placed on suicide watch and received daily psychiatric evaluations of persons familiar with his detention. But 6 days later, on July 29th, Epstein, who's 66, was taken off the watch for reasons that remain unclear on Saturday, the person said. 12 days after that, he hanged himself. Guards making their morning rounds discovered the body at 6:30 a.m. on Saturday, the Bureau of Prisons said. So this is one of the reasons why, ladies and gentlemen, in this article, now you see, keep reading the Times by creating a free account or logging in. Of course, now I can't access that article unless you have an account with the New York Times, freedom of the press. It's also capitalism. But that's the article to the New York Times I just read. So if there were an apparent attempt by Epstein to kill himself, then you have to ask yourself, why was he taken off suicide watch? And who to believe now? Because if you're getting contradictory reports that he wasn't on suicide watch, like many people are saying, from one source, which was, let's see here. One source says he wasn't on suicide watch. The other source says he never was on suicide watch. So when Donald Trump, and I'll just say this, is fake news, he's not lying about that. Some things are fake. Some things are being pushed to create by an agenda, that's being pushed to promote an agenda to get the American people indoctrinated on. And very interesting, they've been tweeting on hashtag on Twitter, Trump body count and Clinton body count, because they're stating, either Donald Trump or in some cases President Clinton had something to do with his death. Now, many people, of course, new articles came out, I remember right before Epstein died, where they talked about, I'm going to put that article up here. It's in the chat box. Hey, how you doing, Regina? Now, they were doing, where was I? Yeah, Donald Trump Jr., his ass, Twitter allowing Trump body count to trend while Clinton body count has way more tweets, but isn't trending, is peak Twitter. And that article was from Vox that I was reading from, by the way. But many people are not buying this apparent suicide, and I myself, I am not, because of the people that were associated with Jeffrey Epstein, big name people that came out. For instance, 23 hours ago, it was reported that Prince Andrew of the English kingdom, the British kingdom, was accused of groping a woman at Jeffrey Epstein's United States home. Court papers were released on Friday, a day before wealthy U.S. financier Epstein was found dead in his prison cell while awaiting trial on sex trafficking charges. Contained in the defamation case papers is an allegation by a woman called Johanna Schoberg. I hope I'm getting that right, that Prince Andrew groped her, touched her breast while they sat on a couch in Epstein's Manhattan apartment in 2001. She recalled in the documents, I remember someone suggesting a photo and told us to get on the couch. And so Andrew and Virginia sat on a couch and they put the puppet on her lap. And so then I sat on Andrew's lap and I believe on my own volition. And they took, and I believe on my own volition. So she sat on his lap. Volition means your own consent, meaning you thought about it. You sat on a married man's lap. Okay, whatever. And they took the puppet's hand and put it on Virginia's breast. And so Andrew put his on mine. Okay. That sounds weird. Y'all understand that? This is from the BBC. That y'all get that? Does that make sense? What she said, what she described? And I mean, strange things happen. But all of these people that hung out with uh, with Epstein and this private island that he had. And what was very interesting too was the Manhattan apartment that they talked about. And I remember on Inside Edition, and this was also what I distinctly remember this, you guys can go look it up, was not far from Bill Cosby's apartment. And that's part of the racial games that they play when they want to bring down when one of their owns goes down, they have to bring one of our owns down and tie it in. And you clearly saw that even when they mentioned Chris Tucker in this, Brett, because I don't believe Chris Tucker personally was going to islands molesting little girls or having sex trafficking or anything. But, did he witness something? That remains to be seen. And obviously, we're not going to get to the bottom of that because the person with all the secrets is dead. And I find it very interesting about that timing. And on the racial aspect of it, it's the same thing what they did with Bill Cosby and Roman Polanski when they had to take Bill Cosby out of the Academy Association. And of course, in the same breath, they took away Roman Polanski. And the problem I had with that was that they knew from the 1970s that Roman Polanski was a convicted rapist and was frankly allowed, and a child molester, basically, because this was a child that he sodomized in Jack Nicholson's home back in the 70s. Angelica Houston actually caught them. Now, she didn't catch them necessarily in the act, but nevertheless, she knew that they were still doing a photo shoot and was wondering why it was taking so long. And he was allowed to flee the country. So they took him out, the Academy, at the same time Bill Cosby did. But they did that, why? It wasn't that they were bothered by what Polanski did. They did that to make it look like it wasn't based on racism as to why they took Bill Cosby out. See, these are the games that they play. Right when Jeffrey Epstein goes into prison, goes and gets accused of sex trafficking, R. Kelly gets the same charge, the same week, by the same court system, the same jurisdiction, the federal jurisdiction. It's not a surprise. I wouldn't be shocked if the same people working on the Jeffrey Epstein case are working on R. Kelly case. And now R. Kelly also is facing additional charges. He can actually do this is basically a life sentence, but 500 years in prison is what he's looking at because he's got confidence in he could beat the sex charges brought by Cook County prosecutors earlier this year. He had beaten them before, winning acquittal on all counts in 2008 in a 2008 child pornography charge. Federal, I'm just skimming through it, guys. Federal prosecutors have more resources and face less political pressure, so they can take their time building the case until they believe it is airtight. That is true. They do have unlimited sources. They are the government. A favorable deal may be the only thing that can keep chance of leaving prison, R. Kelly's chance of leaving prison for the 52-year-old singer before he turned 70. Let me put that article up here. He was caught in the act. Well, R. Kelly isn't on trial. Right. Well, here's the problem with that, Regina. R. Kelly, as you know, was acquitted in 2008 on the child pornography charge. Now, of course, I think the R. Kelly situation is far different from Michael Jackson and Bill Cosby because there was a tape, but nevertheless, based off that tape, the alleged victim did not testify at that trial. You're saying not R. Kelly? Who you saying was caught in the act? Are you talking about Polanski? Matty Newman? More so, if you mess with the rich and powerful, influential people, you end up dead. And I work with rich people in the Bay Area, California, and I know my place. Yeah, well, I mean, this guy is rich. This was a multi-billionaire, Epstein, but they're looking to put R. Kelly in for a long time. Now, what I found interesting about his story, of course, with the R. Kelly situation is that after this documentary came out, don't you find it interesting is that when all of this stuff started and now they're putting up another documentary called Surviving R. Kelly, The Aftermath. See, when I see things like that, guys, I'm not defending R. Kelly because I've heard stories about him before, but as my brother Drew Hepkins from Drew Story News, shout out to him, stated, he deserves a fair trial, just like any person that gets accused of, any crime. It doesn't matter. It could be child molestation, it could be rape, it could be petty theft, or it could be murder. You're innocent until proven guilty, and until you see the evidence. Even if the defendant may be an asshole and he may be unpopular about what I can prove. Al Capone, who was a gangster, has never been proven a convicted murderer, even though we knew he was mafioso. Even though we know about the St. Valentine's Day massacre and those hits that took place in Chicago during Prohibition, he's never been to jail for murder. He was in jail for what? Income tax evasion. Okay, I see you, Regina. So everyone deserves a right to a fair trial. Now, co-aligned with that, I do want to talk about the Brian Banks story that I saw yesterday. So spoiler alert, if you're going to see it, I'm going to talk about it for the next 5-10 minutes. So your best leave in case you want me to spoil the movie for you. Of course, you probably have heard the story of Brian Banks, but I'm what I saw. Very interesting. The brother who played Brian Banks, his actor's name is Aldous Hodge. And you guys may know him from a TV series called Leverage. He played Alec Hartson. He also played MC Ren in Straight Outta Compton. That's where I knew, and I was in the movies thinking, I've seen this dude before. I've seen him. I couldn't put it together, but he's played Noah in Underground as well. Very good job he did on this movie. Now, I think this movie actually was independently produced. It wasn't put out by a big Hollywood studio. I believe it was called Bleak Street Productions is the company. They distributed Bleecker Street, which is street in New York City. It's the street address of Andrew Carpen's prior company, Focus Features, which I remember them real well. The movie, but anyway, Greg Kinnear, he plays the attorney, Justin Brooks, and Melanie Laborde, she played, I guess, Brian's girlfriend. It's a pretty good movie. Anybody having issues buffering? Okay. No, I'm good. So, yeah, it was a pretty good movie. Brian Banks, of course, was a standout high school football player. Now, this is the spoiler parts I'm getting to. And if you know the story from the news, he was falsely accused of raping one of his high school classmates, who I think they named her Kanisha Rice, but that was not her real name. She needs to be put on blast. Her name is Juanetta Gibson. Juanetta Gibson. Okay? Now, Brian, by the way, it was directed by movie is directed by Tom Shadyac, and Tom Shadyac actually is a comedic director. Very interesting, and how he got started. He was a joke writer for legendary comedian Bob Hope, and of course, you probably have heard who Bob Hope is. Centurion who died in '03. Um, Very popular in the 40s and 50s. He did countless shows for the troops. He's listed in Guinness World Book of Records as one of the most charitable celebrities of all time. I think they put him ahead of Michael Jackson as far as charity, but I'm not here to talk about fucking Bob Hope. But anyway, I wanted you guys just to know that very interesting fact. So, what's up, Nikki? John? So, Brian Banks, yes, was accused of rape back in 2002 while he was in class. While this is going on in class, by the way, he's accused of dragging her into a stairway and raping her. They named the girl in the movie Kanisha Rice, and she was, I hate to use the word, but it was a classic example of trash. And I don't want to say ghetto trash because, of course, it's bad saying that enough. But if there was a definition, if there was a walking definition of that term, this girl would be it. Now, I don't know if that's how the woman was in real life, but in the movie, that's exactly what she acted like. She was this woman with, I guess, with the loud mama and kids with the different baby daddies. With the three kids, single, and Brian in the movie spent 6 years in prison, 5 years in prison, 5 years of probation, and he had to register as a sex offender. Now, let you guys know about registering as a sex offender. It is the worst label you can have on you, even worse than murder. We as a society, I think, are more forgiving of murderers. We can tolerate them more than we can tolerate sex offenders and rapists. Thing for a person of being in jail because even the prisoners look at you bad. You're hunted. That's considered the lowest of lows if you did anything to a child. And of course, Brian, being that they were both the same age, it was a rape charge, but it was a rape charge, and they were the same age, it looks like, and very interesting, in the movie, he took this plea deal, even though the evidence was strongly in his favor. His attorney advised him to take this deal in less than 10 minutes, or else it was going to go to trial. The deal was going to be off. But he was pleading to what he thought would be probation, and the judge denied it at the plea bargain when he went before the court to take a plea deal. And so his attorney failed him. And that chief was so interested in trying to, I guess, get this case over with that she didn't even do research, such as going to the actual school, looking at the classrooms, getting a count to see if who was there at the time this rape took place. Things of that nature, things that she failed to look at, trying to rush him to take a plea deal, not even letting him talk to his mother at the time the plea happened. And so when I look at stories like that, and of course, I also look at the story of what happened to the brothers, the Central Park Five, things like that. Of course, if I had to say between When They See Us and the Brian Banks story, they both are tragic stories. They both deal with pain, and especially being a black man in America, how the criminal justice system treats our people. But of course, what made this worse, this was a black woman that falsely accused Brian. And what was interesting and how Brian was able to get out was that the woman, Gibson, actually contacted him on Facebook and tried to hook up with him. And he had it recorded. He had it recorded when she went and talked with a private investigator. Now, again, I gave you guys spoiler warnings if you're going to see the movie, but you can look at the story on Wikipedia as I'm reading, and I'm going through the movie because it is based on a true story. She confessed that everything was made up. She confessed she went down there willingly to make out with him in that area. And that's a very popular area, apparently, with the kids where they go make out at. And he got it all on tape, and the private investigator heard it. And he leaked it out to the press. Now, of course, Brian was risking everything because he made contact with the victim during his probation, which was part of his terms, that he had no contact with his victim, and he could have gone to jail. And, of course, his PO, who was giving him a hard time in the movie, was a hard ass, was going to go to the police with it and report it. However, at the end of the movie, he said, I'm going to wait until after your hearing. He gave him a stay because he knew that Brian was falsely accused. And, of course, he got help with, of course, when you deal with situations like that on a regular basis, that's why I never want a label of sexual assault on me as a man. And you see why we fight with these situations with Bill Cosby and Michael Jackson, how you have that label and that stigma on you. And it can be placed on you basically without evidence, because nowadays all it takes is an accusation alone to just be believed, and you're guilty by in the court of public opinion. You're presumed guilty until proven guilty. You're not, whereas the standard of proof is innocence until proven guilty, beyond a reasonable doubt, in a fair and impartial trial. And of course, the other situation too in the movie was that the jurors were also predominantly white, were all white. That would have been a factor in an appeal. And he got help in the movie with the California Innocence Project in real life. And of course, they are a nonprofit law clinic. They deal out of San Diego, where they deal with cases and investigate those that deal with actual innocence. And of course, make a plea deal, they don't actually plead guilty or not. They actually plead guilty or not guilty or innocent, because you don't, unfortunately, you can be innocent, very much so, and still be guilty in the court of law. That's why the standard is not guilty, meaning that by the definition of the law, do you believe the jury, they ask the jury, do you believe this person is guilty beyond a reasonable doubt? And of course, you can have someone like, let's just say, the Rodney King situation, where all four of those men clearly beat Rodney King. We know they attacked him, despite, yes, I know Rodney was driving drunk, and he had all kinds of issues, but was that necessary to beat him 56 times in the head? Probably not. But yet, an all-white jury in a district, Me Valley, said he's guilty, not guilty, and they stuck up for those cops. So, very interesting story. And Brian did get acquitted. Did get his conviction overturned finally through the help of the California Innocence Project. The man who was the attorney for Brian, and his name is Justin Brooks. There was also another woman by the name of Alyssa Bejokel. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing her name wrong. She works with the CIP, California Innocence Project, and she's worked to exonerate many high-profile cases, including Brian, Timothy Atkins, Reggie Cole, Daniel Larson, Uriah Courtney, among others. So and she serves as the DNA expert. So I'll just put a link to that just so you can look at her bio. So, guys, I'm going to wrap this up in a little bit, but you guys should just check out the movie. It was Justin Brooks is the attorney that helped Brian. It was tragic, and Brian was able to play in an NFL football game, but of course, at that time, he was already in his late 20s, which in football years is like being in your mid 30s. Playing football, of course, takes its toll on you, and that's why it's very hard when you're an old rookie. Being one of the oldest rookies that Brian was, that you actually get a chance to make it on an NFL team. He did join the practice squad for the Seattle Seahawks, and he did get to play in an NFL preseason game against the Cincinnati Bengals. They actually showed pictures and video clips of it. But of course, Brian didn't get a chance to live out, he did get his full dream of making a whole career. But he played for the Atlanta Falcons. And I believe Brian now, if I'm not mistaken, he started a television program, or there was some type of TV program that I don't know if it was what happened with it, but they were going to be dealing with exonerations and crimes. Let's see what the show is called. Anybody know? He co-hosted Final Appeal for Oxygen Network in 2017. Yeah. So that was a TV show that he had. So apparently that, let's see if that is still on the air. It's according to IMDb, it is still on the air. I don't know if he's still there with it, but yeah. It's more common than not when you see these things, guys. Yeah, Prince Andrew, Senator George Mitchell, Governor Bill Richardson. I'm sorry, guys. I'm looking at the link, the names that Jeffrey Epstein named. But yeah, go see the movie on this Sunday if you don't have anything else to do. I'm going to be heading out, go do some things, probably go bowling or even go to a range. So y'all take it easy, guys. Anyway, that's been my time. We'll do another episode of G-Boot 2786 on Gavin Richard Presents. Please subscribe if you have not already to my channel. Please donate. I do Google Pay. Gavin, my email, gavin.grich1@gmail.com, as well as Cash App, Gavin Richard Esquire, ESQ. You guys have a great one. We also do PayPal as well, Gavin Richard at iCloud.com. So, guys, that's it for me. You guys take it easy and have a good one. Peace.